most of the goals we set in our future are built because of imbalances of the brain in the past. And so our imbalance of the brain in our past creates a compensation of dopamine that makes us want to hit better goals in the future. And that dopamine high is what people are chasing inside that. When you chase dopamine, the opposite side of that dopamine, when you don't hit it, is when you crash and you have norepinephrine and epinephrine. Your body goes into a sympathetic state inside that, which causes your body to be stressed out, high blood pressure, high adrenal fatigue, exhaustion, blood sugar issues, insulin issues. All these become catecholamines that are released inside the brain. So one of the things I tell people to do is stop setting bullshit goals, because goals is creating you to destroy yourself.
Welcome to yet again another season of the Abundant Mind podcast. Welcome to season 3. I am your host, Dr. Jake Hansen. And as always, we are bringing the most high mindset individuals that we can so that you can live a better life. So I have a dear friend who has personally changed my life, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. He is also known as Dr. Rewire. He is the hit author of Wired for Wealth, which we're going to have some information and some links down below. He is the host of the incredible podcast, Dr. Rewire Show. He is helping people change their mindset, change their marriages and their life by rewiring their mind. I have with you my dear friend, Dr. Alok Trivedi. Alok, welcome to the show, my man.
Thanks for having me, Jake. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, hey, I'm so grateful to have you on. You and I met years and years ago, and we've met at a few different conferences. And one of the biggest things that I met from you was I was at a chiropractic conference and you were there. You were helping emceeing it. And there was even a little sales battle going on. We had two high net worth individual groups that were doing sales and marketing, and you're emceeing that. And it was amazing to see who you were and to see your mindset. I remember coming to you and saying, hey, I have this incredible opportunity. We've been so blessed where I'm going to pay off our mortgage in one fell swoop, my student loans in one fell swoop. I'm going to pay this off, this off, this off, this off, this off. I'm going to be debt free. Man, I'm stoked. And you sat down with me and you said, well, hey, we should have a conversation about that. Number one, hey, that's great, but we should have a conversation about that. And you spoke to me about mindset. You spoke to me about a different level of wealth accumulation, wealth attraction, and ways I could actually attain all of my goals in a better shot. And instead of paying everything off, I learned the difference between good debt, bad debt, but it was all about my mindset towards attracting and creating wealth. And I'll tell you, it has been one of the greatest conversations I've had, and I can't thank you enough. So my first question is this. I mean, you are a highly successful entrepreneur. You are highly successful in what you do. How did you find that you are Dr. Rewire? How did that come to be?
It was a pretty simple decision, to be honest with you. It only took me 22 years of my life and agony, blood, sweat, and it was a lot of freaking work. I'm not going to lie. It was tough. It was really tough to figure out what it was, because you have the market saying, you got to niche down and, get rich in a niche. And we've all heard these types of things before, and it's great. It's cool. It's good advice. It is good advice. But what I figured out is you can niche down into a target market, or you can niche down into a specific skill that you do for a broad market. There's two different ways of looking at it. But, I found that when you go to a marketing seminar, they're going to tell you to market down into a specific niche market because that's what they're promoting. In the beginning stages, I worked a lot in the chiropractic space and I worked in a lot of the insurance space and the financial services space. Now I have entrepreneurs from all walks of life and all capacities of life, from $100 million CEOs to people who are just starting their business and starting the journey of what I call an ideapreneur, and they're building that path. Either way, but the whole idea is that you can be niched into who you are. The Dr. Rewire is a brand. Obviously, it's a brand that I've got, and it's about being specific. But what I do is so specific to people. It's just wide in an area. But you have to look at it and say, okay, who do you want to serve and how do you want to serve them? When everyone said, you got to niche down in your target market, it really felt small to me. It really felt like I could play at a bigger game and play at a bigger life. And I don't mean that with ego or arrogance. I just felt like, what I do helps so many more people instead of niching down into that. And some can argue it's wise to niche into that specific space, then jump to the next vertical, then jump to the next vertical, which there's some truth to as well. But know what it is you do better than anybody else. And the more you do that, the more successful you can become. Because if you just niche down into a market, there's only a matter of time before someone else comes into that market to do the exact same thing. if you're not specifically niched to do what you do specific. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. And so it brings up kind of two concepts for me. So I see a lot of entrepreneurs in our group, again, docs who are like, hey, we have doctors, entrepreneurs, we have attorneys, we have, again, different CEOs, different businesses. Like, hey, doc, I'm at my million mark. We have a company right now. He's like, hey, we're at 10 million. We want to get to 20. And we're going over their mindset. And what I tend to see is one common thread. And I know you speak to this as an expert. What do you say to entrepreneurs who are they're trying to do exactly what you talked about? It only took you, again, like you said, 22 years, right? What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear these high net worth individuals say, I feel like I'm stuck? What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear that? And then what are the questions you start asking that entrepreneur when they say, I feel I'm stuck?
Depending on the level they're at, it's a different answer. So someone at a $10 million business, the answer is very different than someone at a $400,000 business. Okay. So let's take the two scenarios. Let's take the $10 million business and take that guy who says he's stuck. The answer to him is get out of the way, right? Because he's trying to control everything. And what he's trying to do is be in fear that he's going to lose what he's built. What he's got to do is learn to get out of his own position and bring in a CEO, CFO, and get out of the way and let the business operational people run it. Because as a visionary, if you can take a business up to 10 million, great. But you can't take it beyond that. Like, I'm kind of there in my own business right now, to be very transparent with you. Like, I'm not going to manage this business bigger than where I'm going to take it. I've got to bring in the people inside of it who are going to be able to build it, to grow it, to be able to then manage its growth. And I'll still sit on the board or sit on the CEO level and still do that with my Dr. Rewire business and grow it and have different ideas. But I'm not going to be the guy who's going to sit and say, you know what, we need to add this specific thing inside of it. That's been a hard journey, especially if you come from a doctoring position, because as doctors, we're so in control of the environment. We got to be in control of the patient. We got to be in control of the office, the environment. You're in control of the whole show of what's going on in your practice, whether it be a chiropractic practice, a massage therapy practice, a dental practice, a medical practice. You're responsible for the whole thing, right? The answer to the guy who's making 10 million, 5 million and above, it would be get out of the way and hire the right people and get out and let them run the business and build the business. You've already done the hard part. You've built the visionary pace and you've done that piece.
The quality of your answers that you seek is going to be the quality of your questions. That's one of the things, again, when you met with me, you didn't just tell me, oh, Jake, that's the worst decision you could ever do, man. You want to pay off, 1.5 and dead and this and this and this. You asked me questions. You asked me so many questions, but you first ask, hey, where are you at, man? Be transparent with me. Be honest with me. Where are you at personally? Where's your office at? Because we know for a fact, right, guys, that what our business is making is not necessarily what we're making. We both know several entrepreneurs who their practice, they're making several million in their business, but they're walking home with 70K. Or less than that because they can't manage it well. So the quality of your questions. So those are deep questions that you have to ask yourself. Ed Milet always says, he's like, people say there's no such thing as a stupid question. He's like, there are. If you're not asking yourself difficult questions and questioning why you think the way you think, you're either going to be in your own way. It's going to be difficult to relinquish that control. So that's powerful. So yeah, let's keep going with that. I love that.
I always love to sit and say the quality of the questions determines the quality of your life. And the better quality questions determines a better quality life. It just is. And we all, if you're on listening to this podcast and this group, you're the type of person that wants a better quality life. I get that. I completely get that. I respect that at the same token, right? But let's take the guy who's making 400,000 in his practice. The answer for that guy is completely different. The answer for that guy is, what do you got to do to grow your business, right? Like the question at that point, if you're doing 400,000, chances are you're probably walking away with 100 grand, 125 grand, and you're probably comfortably uncomfortable. What that means is this, is that you're probably at the state that you're like, oh, I wish I had more, but I'm comfortable. I got good enough. And I call this, in our world, we call this the place where you can make choices in your life. And choices are dangerous. They are the antithesis of abundance. And let me explain why. You're saying that doesn't make sense, Doc. I want all the choice I want. I want freedom to be able to do what I want, when I want, how I want to do it. I get it. But listen to this. The more choices you have, that also means the more comfort you have. And the more comfort you have, the less you're going to push yourself to do something. The brain is set up to move towards something in pain more than it is in pleasure. So that means that if you actually want yourself to move, you got to actually put yourself into a greater state of pain of not doing it than you actually are the vision of wanting to actually build something better. So that means that let's say you want to build $1 million business, right? $1 million practice, so to speak. If you said the pain of not building $1 million practice is more than just the pleasure of building $1 million practice is going to be far more powerful for you. You're going to move towards that $1 million practice. But if you just had a vision board, you put it on a wall and what I call a nightmare board, and you said, oh, I can't wait to get there. I can't be there. I can't, all this wonderful, lovely stuff. You're not going to do it. It's going to be a fantasy and you're not going to build it. Pain is 2.5 times more valuable than pleasure is. Medicine knows this, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why they give you got a headache, take an Advil. You got this disease, take this, right? The pain of it gets you to move far more than, hey, you know what? Exercise, live a lifestyle that's healthy, take care of your diet. And then you could also have these things. Nope.
Wow.
Quicker. People want to get out of pain.
One of our patients, he's run all the triathlons and he basically started niching down. This guy, his mile time, his 3 mile time, he's insane. And he always taught that exact concept. He would say, there were times where I would imagine a German Shepherd was chasing me. And I'm like, if it gets me, man, I'm going to get eaten alive or I'm running towards gold. And he says, it's interesting. He goes, I always want to have more of that positive mindset, but it's interesting to see where are we in our own lives? You know, are we being chased or are we going towards that? You have to be able to understand what it is that you really want. And one of the things that you are a master at that I have seen is reverse engineering what it is that people really, really want.
Yeah.
I overheard this conversation it was a young doctor saying, you know, man, if I could just get to 500,000, look, man, if I get to 500, that would just be amazing. And you asked so many questions and it turned out that was just a baloney number he had just thrown out because it sounded awesome, right? Sure. And you asked so many questions and you got him within, I mean, this was like 30 seconds to a minute of what is it that you really want? What do you want? How are you going to get there? When are you going to get there? Why do you want it? I mean, to see what it was and to see his whole mind shift in a matter of seconds was amazing. Helping people truly rewire their mindset is critical. So what do you say to the entrepreneurs, to the docs who, you know, they have that number in mind? Because it typically always comes down to a number of finances, right? What do you do to help them to shift from just that arbitrary kind of number in the ether to actually rewiring and discovering what it is that they truly want in life? How do you get to that point?
Well, first thing I would do, and it's going to sound like a shameless plug, but I'm going to do it anyways, is I would get them to read Wired for Wealth in that capacity, right? I would, because Wired for Wealth is so much more than just a number, because most of us are setting goals. We've been taught these goals, like I'm going to set 500,000, I'm going to set 1 million, I'm going to set 2 million. Where do you come up with these bullshit numbers? They're just, they're so random, haphazard numbers that we say, but do we have a system, a plan of action? Is it real for us? Most of the goals that we set into our future, I hope you guys get what I'm about to say. Most of the goals we set in our future are built because of imbalances of the brain in the past. And so our imbalance of the brain in our past creates a compensation of dopamine that makes us want to hit better goals in the future. And that dopamine high is what people are chasing inside that. When you chase dopamine, the opposite side of that dopamine, when you don't hit it, is when you crash and you have norepinephrine and epinephrine. Your body goes into a sympathetic state inside that, which causes your body to be stressed out, high blood pressure, high adrenal fatigue, exhaustion, blood sugar issues, insulin issues. All these become catecholamines that are released inside the brain. So one of the things I tell people to do is stop setting bullshit goals, because goals is creating you to destroy yourself. And entrepreneurs, I had an entrepreneur, $350 million business, more anxiety, stress, depression, but he had all the money in the world. And I worked with him, rewired it, got him back grounded. Then I work with entrepreneurs who have no money, who are starting out, depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. The same neural cascade is going on inside of the body because of the whole system that we're built in. But if we don't set realistic, tangible, strategic goals, strategic is the key word here, that's attainable. I know everyone says shoot for the stars and you'll end up on the moon, or you know what, you'll end up dead with high blood pressure. That's what the other side of it that nobody wants to talk about. My focus in a lot of entrepreneurial conversations that I have is entrepreneurial health, because entrepreneurs destroy their health and don't even realize why they're doing it. They're doing it mentally. They're doing it mentally. Even us doctors, we know it, but we chase these things because we think it's going to make us feel better. We say, I want to make 500,000 because that's going to make me feel more of who I am. And we chase the approval of it. We chase feeling better about it because we think now we're successful. But the reality is that success is also going to be the key to failure. I'll give you an example of this, right? I don't preach this from an ivory tower by any means. And I did the Chasing Success game. That's my first book on this side, right? Was about chasing success. That's why I wrote the book on it, because I was the master at it, for crying out loud. I saw 1,000 patient visits a week, was doing 250, 300,000, doing a couple $1 million in my practice at 25, 6, 7 years old, and a pretty young dude. And I wanted to hit these numbers, and I'd hit these massive accolades in the business, right? Which are huge numbers. But then after I hit those numbers, I felt with a massive level of depression. And for 2 years after I saw 1,250 patient visits myself, now I'm not saying that to brag about my numbers because I know it's not about the numbers, but it was so important to me. That's all that mattered. And that was a revenue state that I wanted because I want to see that many people. I want to help people in that capacity. And when I looked at it for the next 2 years, I felt into massive depression because I didn't know what to do next. It's better to have a strategic, systematic process that you're building and you're continually building and growing, and where you're having enough challenge going on in your life and you're having a little bit of support going on and you have equal amounts for growth. But most of us are exhausting our HPA axis which is your hypothalamic pituitary axis, and burning our entire system down and breaking it down. That is ultimately what I work with, Jake. That's the entrepreneur that I rewire because I know what's going on in their body.
And you guys, I want you to think of this one thought. Again, when something seems counterintuitive, right? But when you look at the greats, when you look at the greatest minds, you look at people who are at a destination you want to be at, they are all doing the things that you think is counterintuitive. And how many of us constantly say, oh man, I want to be just like Alok. I want to be just like you. I want everything you've had. You've gone through a lifetime of trial and error and paying a heavy, heavy price physically, emotionally, financially to get where you are. But again, and as you were talking about, you don't get there alone. You have to be able to bring on the right people with you. Linear growth, like you said, we'll see a lot of entrepreneurs who get to a point where they're at a certain level in their business or their practice, and then they always stay at that level because linearly you can only run as fast as you can. When you are able to bring on leverage and bring on the right group. And again, like you said, the answer may be you need to step out of the equation and get out of your way. And you need to just sit on your board now and then watch this grow exponentially. Because living in an exponential mindset, as opposed to a linear step-by-step mindset, that's what I see keeps a lot of people back. But it always is going to come down to right here. A question. So as I sent some messages out to a lot of members who received the podcast, I have some messages, or I asked some questions, and I got to receive some messages back. And one of the questions I got back: what was once an undervalued tool you once learned that you now consider indispensable?
It's going to sound so cliche, but it's so true. Is my own downtime, my own energy management. And in the beginning stages of every business that I've done, it's like you grind it out, you work harder, you got to do more. And people put on this, you got to do more. And you feel like you got to work all the time. And now understanding the power of recovery, the power of my own exercise, the power of my own health inside that, and how important that is to the entire game of me producing and living and performing. I don't think I did before, right? Like I transparently say this often, that when I started my practice, I wasn't a healthy guy. I was 50 pounds overweight. I smoked cigarettes. I drank like a fish. Now if you catch me once a month with a tequila, it's a rarity. Maybe like once a quarter or something like that, I'll have a tequila or two, which is nothing. I don't smoke. I've lost a bunch of weight and I'm healthy. I'm very disciplined with my health, but I didn't understand the magnitude of it. Because when you're younger, you have enough to burn and you think like you can just make it up. And then caffeine, you just take the caffeine drink, you drink your coffee and think, okay, I'll be fine. I'll drink more coffee, I'll be fine. But you realize that all that shit's breaking you down. My French, all that stuff is breaking you down. And today, I would say that the tool that I use more than anything is the calmness of my mind and body and integrating the mind and body. In the beginning, I don't think I used it as a unit, even though I knew it, but as my own work and my own rewiring process for my own journey, my own life, I've learned to integrate my mind and body so much more and heal myself of health conditions, ailments, diseases, stuck with money, finances, going through a bad divorce, all that stuff, like just figuring all the process out for myself. Now that energy of making sure no matter what, any day, every single day, unless it's a true recovery day and a rest day for me, I'm always working on me first thing in the morning. I don't typically, like this podcast that we were recording, is the reason we've had such a tough time, Jake, is because I normally don't come in before 10 a.m. in my practice or into my business, because I don't allow myself to. Amazing. Because at first from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. is my time. That is the most valuable time of my day to think to. And that's the other thing I would tell you is true thinking time. Not just, let me wander my brain. Concentrate the idea and concentrate your time to say, this 30 minutes, I'm just going to think, and you write the subject. Literally write the subject. I'm going to think about 12 different ways I'm going to create new revenue streams. What'll be amazing is that everyone knows this. Here's the interesting thing about the personal development and coaching and all that space. You have the answers within you. That's why I don't like to sit and say that I'm a coach or a consultant. I'm a mentor. My job is to help you find your way. I'll light the path, but your job is to find the answers are within you. I'm not the guy to tell you what the answers should be, right? Like you said, it's questions. And I believe that that's an important factor. So I look at it and say, when I'm thinking in my brain and my body in the right state, how it's the highest level of performance of thinking I can do. That to me is the most important thing today.
So can I get pretty visceral with you? Can I get pretty personal with you?
Sure.
I guarantee right now, you are listening to this. You're listening to this right now, and something has come to your mind. Something has come to your heart, right? Something. We all, everyone wants to live that, that Instagram, that facade of, hey, I one of my buddies, he's really funny. He debunks one of his businesses. He debunks, like, he used to be a magician and he debunks other magicians, but he'll debunk like, oh, hey, it looks like this was taken from a private jet. He's like, look, they actually used a toilet bowl lid for a window, and then they got a couch. He debunks this stuff. It's very interesting. He says, why is it that we always want to put up that facade? You have to get to the point. Again, as you guys listen to the greats like Dr. Alok here, when you listen to the greats, when you listen, Tony Robbins always said, leaders are readers, right? When you read and follow the greats, they have all shared. And again, Dr. Alok, when I know him, I researched him. He's like, this is your thing, man. You tell me where I can bring value. We didn't have anything pre-set up. Everything that I read shares what he just shared right now. What is an undervalued and indispensable tool? It is guarding your time. It is protecting fiercely your time. So the question I really want to get to you is, at what point in your life, because again, I've seen you through multiple walks of life and multiple levels and higher levels of success, that we would brand as success. Was there a visceral moment where you really realized, where you started truly questioning, like, hey, I'm preaching this, teaching this, but I'm not living that, or I'm not living it to the degree I want? If so when was that? And what was the conversation you had to have with yourself to get where you are sitting in front of me today?
Yeah, great question. I remember it very, very directly. I was speaking in stages, and I was working heavily in the personal development industry. I am not a personal development guy. I am actually against personal development, because personal development is personas, the masks that we put on ourselves. I'm not into that. I'm interested in actually getting truly, authentically who you are, which is the real version of yourself. That's really the work that I do, right? Personal development is trying to make people happy, and then it leads them sad, makes them happy, and then it leads them to be sad. And they're depressed. And I can sum up personal development in one sentence. Well, old personal development was change your mind, change your life. Right? That was it. Change your beliefs, change your life. Cool. Got that. Today's personal development is, I've overcome this. You can also overcome this. Every seminar you look at where the speaker doesn't have real substantial content, and it's I've gone through hardship. You can also come through hardship. Wow. We're inspiring. Great. Congratulations. Right. And that sounds very demeaning, and I don't mean to be demeaning about it. I'm simply saying that if we look at it, I was there. I was preaching the same story, and I'd be on stage, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 people, telling them to visualize, telling them to do all this shit. My life was in shambles, right? I was in the middle of a divorce. I had no money as my name. I drove basically to this venue. I stayed in a shitty Airbnb, and I was backstage with names of greats, legends in the space. And I would ask them the questions, and I'd sit and say, hey, look, why is it I need help? I need to help grow my business. I need help to get names and numbers and sales and all this stuff. And they'd tell me, like, you know what, you got to change your life. You got to change your beliefs. I'm like, okay, great. I love the idea. I've read it a million times over, right? In fancy different ways. I've read it, but then how do I do it? And they say, well, we don't know how to do that. And I'm like, well, how do you do that? Then they tell me, you know what, you got to jump up and down, and you got to do a bunch of affirmations, and you got to get up at 18 hours at 4:00 in the morning, and 3:00 in the morning, and 2:00 in the morning. Then you got to eat healthy, diet, exercise, read from the good book, and never be mean, never be. I was like, what the hell? Like all these things you're supposed to do, and that's going to change your beliefs. And I looked at it. I said, yeah, okay, great. But like, how do I know what my beliefs are? That was my next question. And they said, well, you look at your environment, and that's your belief. You just look at the environment, and that's your belief. And honestly, in my head, Jake, I was like, bullshit. Because I know this, and you know this, right? Especially being a doctor, someone can walk into my practice with back pain, and I know they got back pain. Okay, cool. They could have a subluxation. They could have a herniated disc. They could have a spondylolisthesis. They could have a bulging disc. They could have a perforated disc. They could have cancer. They could have a million different things, but the symptom of it was back pain. And that's when I realized at that time, I was like, oh my God, your beliefs are actually symptoms. They're not reality. They're not the reality. The belief was the symptom, not the true cause of what's going on inside the brain. So I remember driving home that night and it was in my mad science, like Einstein days, right? And I used to smoke cigarettes at the time. I had stayed up drinking caffeine all night, and I literally pulled out all my neuroanatomy textbooks, all my neuroscience textbooks, because I was an avid student. Like I've always been an avid student. Even after I graduated, I'd study 3-4 hours a day. I still do. And I put it all together and I put the pieces of the whole thing together and I mapped out where our brains create perceptions and where they create beliefs and where the beliefs live and how do we create them, where the memories begin. And I mapped the whole thing out and I created this framework to an exercise that I call the belief inventory today, but I didn't have that. It wasn't sophisticated at the time, but I realized that I had, and I did it. And I created a belief in my life that you could have love or money, but not both. Through the experience of a brutal divorce, I created that story for my life. It's not accurate. It's not true, but it's what I believed to keep me protected and safe. And then I had to begin the process of then rewiring that. So yeah, absolutely. Was it visceral? I had no money to my name. I had lived on a lemon for 4 days of my life. Every dime I had, I walked away from, and I started my, version 2.0 of Alok as with nothing but hunger and a drive to be able to serve people and help people and go speak and teach and take my, whatever my expression of wisdom is and share that with the world.
And I know that a lot of this, a lot of this is in Wired for Wealth, your book. So you guys, you need to read this, and then coming out soon. So upon publish of this date, this will probably be on, it's going to be on Audible. It's going to be out there, but you need to get this book because Dr. Alok, you guys, he truly teaches you how to really understand and question your beliefs, and especially to find the contradictions in your life. He helped me rewire my thinking. And because of that decision, in less than a year, I formatted what I was doing and I put that finances to work where I think, we had student loan, we had a good home. I have no other ugly debt, but we made $310,000 because of what Alok taught us. And the freedom that has come because I've been able to get out of my way, bring in people for my other businesses, my main practice. Because you're right, I was holding us back to a degree. I couldn't relinquish control because I wanted to be the one controlling it. And you helped me on that level. And you guys, Dr. Alok, Dr. Rewire can help you as well. So we're going to have a link down below of Wired for Wealth. We're going to have a link so you can connect. Please follow Alok. Again, the Dr. Rewire Show. He he has some incredible guests on his show, but the mindset and the pearls of truth and hardcore wisdom, he will allow you to see what is it that you really want and how you think to get there. So
if I can say something, Jake, if I can add to it, like this is something,
please.
We're just in the process of developing this. It should be out in about 4 weeks. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but I do want to share this because I think it'll be valuable to the listeners, is that we're actually creating an app that I think it's going to be called Ultimind, where it's actually rewiring the brain. So you'll be able to speak into the app and it'll use your voice as an emotional regulator. It'll tell you your emotions. And from that, you're going to be able to actually use the rewire process and my process and help rewire yourself. So on a daily basis, you're going in a state of true governance and true understanding, in a state of where you're balanced, right? Just like we look at our HRV to make sure that with patients, is their HRV balanced? Is there sympathetic and parasympathetic balance in their body? The thing is that most people don't realize, what about the parasympathetic and sympathetic of the psychology? And we're going to be able to rewire that on a day-to-day basis so that we can, in essence, control and govern our emotions so that we don't live chaotically. We can actually live in a state of much more bliss and performance. And so we're now taking it, this is going to be taken to the world. So in about 4 weeks, when this thing comes out, they can go to the Ultimind app. It'll be in the Apple Store, Google Store, all that stuff, and they can actually download it and try it out for themselves.
That's mind-blowing to hear that. Literally, you can see where you're regulating and where you're actually living. A lot of us don't realize if your blood sugar is a little too high, a little too low, heart rate, blood pressure, a little too high, a little too low. It's in living in that state of stress consistently is not healthy. So I love that you're helping us to truly understand where is it that we actually are. and how to actually begin to regulate and change that. Alok, my brother, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for giving of your time, of giving of your mindset, of giving out of your abundance. You can't give out of the abundance you don't have, and I really appreciate you. I am grateful for you. If you guys want to connect, we're going to have Dr. Alok, so Dr. Rewire's information here below. Thank you so much for helping me elevate my mind, my heart, my life. And Dr. Alok will do the same for you. Thanks, Alok. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you. Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it, Jake. Thank you so much.